If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with a response video. So this was a thread I saw started up by Quest for Metal, or Questy as he's known now. I saw him do this video just a few days ago, as of recording this video on Sunday, and I thought the subject was pretty damn interesting, and I hope it keeps getting circulated around, especially after this, that I do it. And it is the best 3 album runs in metal. And while Questy didn't do as many as I'm about to do, I'm doing 10 bands. Now, of course, there are a lot of bands out there who have had amazing 3 album runs. Now, pretty much what is a 3 album run? Well, pretty much self-explanatory. 3 straight albums of excellence within a metal band's discography. Now, some of these choices, I could have went with multiple options, but I went with ones that I personally wanted to highlight more than any of them. And without further ado, let's get started. So the first best 3 album run in metal. So the first band I'm going to talk about is Darkthrone. Now, I know a lot of people would automatically assume the 3 albums I'm going to talk about are the Unholy Trinity albums. Not so fast, because while A Blaze in the Northern Sky is an all-time classic and Under a Funeral Moon is actually really good, Transylvanian Hunger, to me, not that great of an album. It's good, it's okay, but again, I'm just not a big fan of the production on that album. I'm not a fan of the songs that much when it came down to what they were going for, which was just constant tremolos and blast beats every single song. It's like, can we get some dynamics on this song or on that album, please? Can we do more than just blast beats and tremolos the whole way through? So, I'm not going with the Unholy Trinity. At me in the comments if you will and say how wrong I am, but to me, the best 3 album run in Darkthrone is the latest 3. So, Old Star to start off. After all, I did review this when it came out in 2019. Heck, I've reviewed all 3 of these albums I'm talking about, but Old Star, to me, started the best 3 album run for Darkthrone, going for that more classic heavy metal meets doom metal sound with a little bit of a black metal touch. But yeah, I still go back to this one all the time whenever I'm in the mood for something Darkthrone oriented. This is one of the albums I go to the most. And then right after that we get Eternal Hails, which was 2 years ago. Yeah, definitely a little more of like a late 70s demo mix, but it still sounds incredible. And also only 5 tracks. And all 5 tracks are absolutely incredible. His Master's Voice, Hate Cloak, Wake of the Awakened, Voyage to a North Polar Drift, and Lost Arcane City of Apocra. All 5 songs have something cool to offer. Kind of a continuation of Old Star, but also bringing in perhaps some more Motorhead and Black Sabbath influence on here, but maintaining like some Celtic Frost vibes. Again, I did a review of this, so you can check out that video. And then, of course, the latest one, Astral Fortress, which is kind of like the perfect culmination of Old Star and Eternal Hails. Like, this feels like the perfect hybrid of both albums. Like, the production was still in the vein of Eternal Hails, but the mix and the masters felt more like Old Star. And even the songwriting kind of went for more of that Old Star approach as opposed to the Eternal Hails approach. But yeah, this was another one I did a full review of. If you want to know my full opinion, check that video out. But yeah, to me, the best Darkthrone 3 album run, Old Star, Eternal Hails, Astral Fortress. But now moving on to the next band on the list, and that is, of course, Death. Now, you could make a case for any 3 of their 7 albums being a great run of albums. However, I decided to go for a bit of an earlier period, so we're going to talk about Leprosy, Spiritual Healing, and Human. So yeah, Leprosy, obviously for the classic death metal lover like myself, this is a quintessential album for early death metal. After all, this is far more of a death metal album than Possessed Seven Churches, in my opinion, and little more death metal than Scream Bloody Gore. But when it comes down to, like, the most important death metal album of all time, it would be this. Because this was the album that started the Florida scene. What more do you want me to say other than that? And then following that, we got Spiritual Healing, which very much kind of continues in a similar vein of Leprosy, but also incorporating a little bit more melody and a little more technicality. Like, this was the beginning of what they would become throughout the remainder of the 90s, and that's that more progressive tech death sound. This was somewhat the beginnings of it, while still maintaining the old school death metal approach. But yeah, this is a hell of a follow-up to an important album such as Leprosy. And then following that, we get to the full completion of the transition, and that is Human, when they went full-on prog and tech death and all over the place. After all, you got 2 guys from Cynic, Paul Masvidal and Sean Reinert, rest in peace Sean, and Steve DiGiorgio on bass, along with Chuck on vocals and guitar, and they were able to craft some masterful progressive death metal, technical death metal, still old school death metal to some degree, but yeah. After all, what started with Spiritual Healing culminates here, and it would only get more progressive as the albums afterwards go on. So yeah, Death's 3-album run, in my opinion: Leprosy, Spiritual Healing, and Human. Now we get into Iron Maiden, and this is another one you could make a case for a lot of different combinations. You could say the first 3, you could say the last 3 of the 80s, you could even say the first 3 of the 2000s could be considered a great run. But for me, my 3 albums for Iron Maiden that I think are a perfect run: Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, and Power Slave. First, Number of the Beast. I just recently did my ranking for Iron Maiden. This was my number 2 on the list, and it's a classic album amongst classic albums. After all, the big 3 of the title track, Run to the Hills, and Hallowed Be Thy Name. 3 of a kind right there. But everything else on here, pretty cool deep cuts, I would say. But yeah, Number of the Beast. And then, of course, Peace of Mind, which first one with Nico McBrain on drums. And he absolutely delivers, especially on the drum intro to the opening track, Where Eagles Dare. Of course, Flight of Icarus and The Trooper, big standouts. But of course, you also get Revelations, Still Alive, To Tame a Land, among many others. This was a great follow-up to a classic. And then a great follow-up to that, and still for me the best Maiden album, Power Slave. Every song absolutely rips and delivers, especially the final track, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, where they really get all over the place and kind of almost progressive to some degree. But yeah, if you want to know my full opinions on these 3 albums from Maiden, just go watch my Maiden ranking. Really good stuff. Alright, so the next band, oh man, we're already up to band number 4. But the next band, we're going to go a little bit more recent, and that is Mastodon. Now, Mastodon, no bad albums. In fact, every single one of them are very good to incredible. But for me, the best 3-album run: Leviathan, Blood Mountain, Crack the Sky. So yeah, Leviathan, where they started to get a lot more progressive, whereas the debut, Remission, still very much a sludge album, but with some prog touches. This is more or less a perfect balance of the sludginess and the progressive songwriting. After all, Blood and Thunder is still one of the heaviest songs of the 2000s. Sea Beast, where they got really started into the prog realm. Hearts Alive, just fantastic songs, top to bottom. This was, I would maybe say, the best album of 2004. But 2004 had a lot of killer albums, but yeah, this would probably be the best from that year. And then 2006, we get to Blood Mountain, where kind of a more proper continuation musically and evolving from Leviathan, where they got a little bit more melodic with the vocals, but still pretty damn heavy, but even more proggy. Songs like Sleeping Giant, Capillarian Crest, Colony of Birchmen. Awesome, awesome songs on here. So yeah, hell of a worthy follow-up to Leviathan, and then it all culminates with, in my opinion, still their best album, Crack the Sky. 2009, brilliant album. 7 tracks, so they definitely fully realized their progressive metal roots and just created some masterful music. Oblivion, fucking incredible track, and I'm gonna be seeing Mastodon live here in a few weeks, along with Gojira and Lorna Shore. But yeah, I'm hoping they play Oblivion live. But if not, it'll be okay. Just so I could see Mastodon is going to be fantastic. But yeah, I mean, Divinations, The Czar, The Last Baron, every single song absolutely incredible. Again, if you want to know my full opinions on these Mastodon albums, watch my ranking for them. And now we get into Metallica, and I think everybody knows which 3 I'm going to talk about. Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets. So yeah, Kill 'Em All, one of the greatest debut albums of all time, the blueprint for thrash in the early days. After all, Hit the Lights, Motor Breath, Whiplash, Phantom Lord, Seek and Destroy, Metal Militia, top to bottom. Still probably the most important thrash album of all time. Without this, probably wouldn't have had any thrash afterwards. No Show No Mercy, no Fistful of Metal, no Bonded by Blood, none of that. And it all starts with this. And then they would get better with Ride the Lightning by diversifying the songwriting, by bringing in some more classic metal chops, like in For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, but still very thrashy, especially the title track, Fight Fire with Fire, Trapped Under Ice. Call of Cthulhu is a great instrumental, Creeping Death, still a phenomenal live staple to this day. But yeah, Ride the Lightning, some people say their best album. I say it's number 2 behind Master of Puppets. You all should know my opinion about this album already. If you don't, quick version. My favorite album in all of music, the album that got me into metal, and without this album, I would not be here on YouTube. So yeah, Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, and Kill 'Em All. Now we get into Morbid Angel. And this is another one I think I have a good idea what people would think is going to be the 3-album run, and that is Altars of Madness, Blessed Are the Sick, and Covenant. If you guessed that, you would be correct. Yeah, Altars of Madness, one of the greatest debuts, again, in the history of metal as a whole. And definitely, probably the second best death metal album of all time behind Leprosy. But I mean, top to bottom, Immortal Rites, Maze of Torment, Chapel of Ghouls, Blasphemy, like every single song. Come on! Do I really have to keep talking about this album more than I already have in the Morbid Angel ranking? So we're just going to move on and then into Blessed Are the Sick. Very different style than Altars of Madness, whereas Altars had a little bit more of that thrashy influence, kind of like early Death. Whereas here, still get some thrash parts, but this is mostly like sludgy death metal. After all, songs like Fall from Grace, Day of Suffering, the title track, The Ancient Ones, Abominations, like all have some more sludgy, groovy, evil, brutal sections going on, but with some like cool classical elements here and there. But yeah, hell of a follow-up. And then maybe one of their more aggressive albums, Covenant. After all, some people would say this is the best Morbid Angel album. For me, number 2 behind Altars, but still phenomenal album. God of Emptiness, still one of the biggest hits in death metal history, but also Angel of Disease, Sworn to the Black, Rapture, Blood on My Hands, Lion's Den. Like, again, another case. Every song's incredible. Even the interlude heading into God of Emptiness wasn't bad. But yeah, Covenant. What more do I have to say? Check out my ranking of Morbid Angel, but I'm sure everybody that's watching this pretty much already has. Alright, so now we move on to Opeth. And for me, there's quite a few different combinations of a 3-album run you could do for Opeth. But for me, it's going to be My Arms Your Hearse, Still Life, and Blackwater Park. Starting off, of course, with My Arms Your Hearse. Pretty much kind of moved away from their quote-unquote black metal roots on the first 2 albums, even though still prog death metal, but there was a little bit more of a black metal influence in the production as well as some of the riff writing on there. Here, when they moved from Dan Swano to Fredrik Nordstrom on production, they got heavier, the growls got deeper, the cleans got better, and the songwriting got much more dynamic. After all, April Ethereal, Win, The Amen Corner, Demon of the Fall, Karma, and even the transitional tracks, beautifully done. And this was the first concept album for Opeth where every song is pretty much well connected. So yeah, My Arms Your Hearse. And then followed that up a year later with Still Life, where it got even heavier and the vocals, like the growls, got even more evil sounding and deeper, but the cleans again just kept getting better. And also, for me, this would be my number 3 Opeth album, if for those who haven't seen my ranking. Yeah, this was pretty high up. The More, Godhead's Lament, Moonlapse Vertigo, Serenity Painted Death, White Cluster, and even the 2 more melodic tracks, Benighted and Face of Melinda, are masterpieces. Definitely where they were really honing in on their prog, where it started with the early stuff and pushed further on My Arms Your Hearse. This was really when the prog got fully realized. And then, of course, Blackwater Park, in my opinion, still the best Opeth album, where it's much more lush, even more dynamic, and of course with Steven Wilson helping out. It's a masterpiece. I would still say the best metal album of the 2000s, even though there's a lot of tough competition, but still, this is just brilliant and emotional, yet powerful, and at times brutal. But yeah, Blackwater Park. So yeah, my Opeth run. My Arms Your Hearse, Still Life, Blackwater Park. 3 more bands to go, and the next band we're going to talk about is Sepultura. And for most people, I would say this is the run some people would more or less think of, and that's going to be Schizophrenia, Beneath the Remains, and Arise. First with Schizophrenia, yeah, you had Morbid Visions beforehand. Really good album, despite the production flaws and the guitars being out of tune. But even though it's still a little more rough around the edges, the production got a lot better, songwriting got better, and the guitars sound better. After all, Andreas Kisser comes in, and instant songwriting upgrade, starting off with From the Past Come the Storms, To the Wall, Escape to the Void. Inquisition Symphony, still in my opinion the best Sepultura instrumental of all time. Septic Schizo, Rest in Pain, just top to bottom again, absolutely brilliant. If only the production was better, I would say this would have been the album to put Sepultura on the map. But luckily the follow-up did, and that's Beneath the Remains. After all, it's fast-paced, it's brutal, it's energetic, absolutely fantastic. Title track, Inner Self, Stronger Than Hate, Mass Hypnosis, like a perfect 1, 2, 4, Jesus, 1, 2, 3, 4 punch of songs just right out of the gate slamming you. But the rest of the album still delivers, and then some, in so many aspects. And also Scott Burns coming in on production, which definitely helped. But yeah, Beneath the Remains. And then it culminates with Arise. This album, still one of my all-time favorite thrash albums in the history of the genre. The title track, probably still my favorite Sepultura song, period. And this was another case of like a great 1, 2, 3 punch with the title track, Dead Embryonic Cells, and Desperate Cry. But still the rest of the album kicks ass. Murder, Subtraction, Altered State, Under Siege, Meaningless Movements, Infected Voice. Brilliant stuff, and actually had more sound when they recorded this. And of course, like, and it's funny, it's like all 3 of these albums, all very similar. It's like Beneath the Remains is the better produced version of Schizophrenia, and Arise is the better produced version of Beneath the Remains. Like, they're all very similar, but with some minute changes. But still, phenomenal run. What more can I say? The penultimate band is, of course, Slayer! And I think we all know which three we're going to talk about here. Rain and Blood, South of Heaven, Seasons in the Abyss. Rain and Blood, still amongst the most important thrash metal albums of all time. Pretty much set the standard a little bit for like some early death metal, some later black metal bands, and grindcore. It's just brutal, it's evil. Again, I've ranked Slayer, so you should know my full opinion about this album. And then, of course, they get into different territory with South of Heaven with different guitar sounds, slowing sections down, getting a little bit more, at times, doomy, and even a little bit sludgier and groovier at times, but still maintaining the evil thrash that was on Rain and Blood, but just a little bit different. And then, of course, Seasons in the Abyss, the perfect balance of Rain and Blood and South of Heaven, but much heavier. And this, you could also argue, it could have been like a proto-death metal album because of the songwriting dynamics and some of the brutality of some of these songs. War Ensemble, Dead Skin Mask, Skeleton of Society, the title track. Top to bottom, it's a classic. Again, if you want to know my full opinion, check out my Slayer ranking. So yeah. And now for the final band on this list, and that's going to be the late great Typo Negative. And I think everybody should know which three I'm going to talk about. Bloody Kisses, October Rust, World Coming Down. Three vastly different albums. We're starting off with Bloody Kisses here, kind of where they really began to push forward into the gothic territory, whereas you got hints of it on Slow, Deep, and Hard and Origins of the Feces, whereas here that gothic influence got fully realized, still maintaining some of the thrashy and hardcore parts and some of the dark humor still left over on here, but definitely going for more of that gothic doom vibe that, like I said, was hinted at early on but fully realized here. After all the big ones, Black Number 1, Christian Woman, Summer Breeze, the title track, top to bottom, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And then to follow that up, we get October Rust, which got even more gothic, and it's more romanticized goth, I would say, because of the more romantic songs like Love You to Death, Be My Druidess, My Girlfriend's Girlfriend, and Praise of Bacchus. But still, you get a little bit of some darkness on here, like Redwater, Christmas Morning, Haunted, Wolf Moon. Like, you still get some darker songs, and you still get some humorous parts, especially in the first couple of songs, and then the final track, where they were just basically saying, thank you for purchasing the album. Hope it wasn't too bad, essentially. But yeah, the humor's still there, but the romance got even bigger and more lush. And then it culminates with gothic metal in the darkest, most somber, depressing, and yet heaviest extent with World Coming Down. After all, the themes behind this album, most people who are fans of Typo should know about the themes. You know, Peter's life in complete turmoil by this point, and these songs truly do reflect on all that and then some. I mean, I would say that the big three tracks for me, White Slavery, Everyone I Love Is Dead, and the title track, World Coming Down. Just wow. And I apologize if you hear some hammering outside. I can't do anything about that. But yeah, perfect culmination of like diversifying what they were going for. Bloody Kisses being more the humorous side of goth. October Rust on the more romantic side. And then here on the heavier, darker, somber side. So yeah, those are my bands for the best 3 album runs in metal history. And of course there are a lot of other bands I could have considered. I could have considered Black Sabbath. I could have considered Asphyx. I could have considered... there's a ton of bands I could have went for on here. But these, in my opinion, the best of the best. But of course, this is all just my opinion. What do you guys think? What are your favorite 3 album runs in metal history? Let me know in the comments, or do a response video and tag me and Quest for Metal, since Quest for Metal started this whole thing. And Questy, this was a hell of an idea. I can't believe I didn't think about this sooner. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.